For those who don't know, I'm really into making formats for stuff. I love running tournaments. I love cooking up new formats. I feel like I've done a new format video every single year on this channel talking about what I'd like to see, what improvements could be made, what I like about what they've done, what I haven't liked, mostly what I haven't because I find a way to complain. But this is going to be just a straight up pitch for what I think the kickoff event in December 5th through 7th should look like because I'm actually really proud of this one. I really like what I've designed. I think it takes into account just about everything. So let's get into it. We got to start with what we know and what we don't. So what we know so far is that we know that there's going to be an in-studio LAN from December 5th through 7th. We know that this will host 6 North American teams and 6 European teams. We know that both North America and Europe's main events start on November 14th. What we don't know so far is the format or the broadcast schedule. And so those are the main things that I really want to focus on as I talk about this. I know we don't know like the points distribution or anything like that, and that's something that I'm sure will have to be cooked up. But in terms of what I think the format should look like, let's get into it. First, we got to start out with the qualifiers. So we know both weekends are starting on November 14th. This doesn't really serve a problem for the first weekend. The first 2 days are double elimination. You don't really pay too much attention to these days as we already know who the top 32... We know that all the best teams are going to get at least into the Swiss stage, most likely into the main stage as well. And so we basically just copy-paste from 2025. You know, day 1 and 2, so November 14th and 15th, you've got your double eliminations down to 32 teams. On day 3, run the Swiss stage just like you've been running. Maybe find something better than Buchol's score because I'm really, really having a problem with that, and at least in terms of how much it actually ends up determining the seeding. But you run your 2 groups of 16 Swiss stage, and then the top each from each group advance. You could do a like combined 32-team Swiss stage, have everyone be in the same stage, but I also understand wanting to split it up so it's a little bit less chaotic, and if one match gets really hung up and takes a long time, you're only delaying half the teams. But my suggestion for this is copy-paste from 2025 in terms of how each day looks. Obviously, none of these are going to be broadcasted outside of team streams. But this stays the same for the first weekend of 2026 RLCS, in my suggestion. As we get into the second weekend, this is where things get a little bit different. I think Friday, you've run your GSL groups just like you did last year. Honestly, I didn't have much of a problem with the format for last year. I thought the 2 Swiss stages to get from 32 to 16 teams was pretty solid, and getting the top 16 teams more often than not, at least on the weekend. And then I like how the group stage itself fed into the AFL bracket format, where it's like you got your teams that go into uppers, your teams that go into lowers, and it feeds in nicely where, you know, if you win your group, you're, you know, in the upper bracket. If you make it out of your group but in the lowers, you're in the lower bracket. It made a lot of sense to me. So I suggest we keep it GSL groups, run both North America and Europe. This will be the same as 2025, except they'll be running at the same time. Normally, Europe starts around 11 a.m. and North America starts around 1 p.m. when we do the Friday group stages. Maybe you just choose to delay North America by a couple hours. Normally, if Europe's running fast, it takes 2.5 hours because you got 3 best of 5s and then you're done, especially without the seeding matches, which I assume we're still not keeping this year. I think you could have it start at like 2 maybe, but like delay North America by an hour so people can catch all of the action if they want. But even if you don't, it's like there's not going to be all that much overlap in terms of when North America and Europe are playing. It's just going to be, you know, a lot of teams facing off in Rocket League across the world on the same day. Once we get into Saturday, November 22nd, that is the first day that things start to look a little bit different. And honestly, they really don't look all that different because my opinion for what Saturday should look like is just a normal Saturday for North America. I think you run your day 1 of top 8, so this would be the part where you're doing the upper AFL and the lower AFL bracket, right? And you put this on broadcast. Then on Sunday, things really shake up on the 23rd because you just do the same for Europe. You don't play out Championship Sunday for North America. You leave it as it is, and then you do your normal Saturday for Europe on Sunday. This would also be broadcasted. That way, it makes sense that both these regions are starting on the same weekend, and you get to cover them both on broadcast. So where does this leave us? This leaves us with a top 6. You know, once you go into Championship Sunday, you know you have your top 6 teams, and I think that's why this sets up so perfectly for them to run on the same weekend and you to run the broadcasts this way, because how we stand heading into the major at this point, or at least after this weekend, is that you'll have your 2 upper-seeded teams from North America and Europe, and then your 3 through 6 teams determined from North America and Europe. So whoever wins in the upper AFLs, we still play those matches, right? Because it's going to be important later. But you've got your 3 through 6 teams and your top 2 teams from each of the regions. Let's get to December 5th. We're in LAN. We're in the studio. Probably a day that people are going to look forward to the most. And so I think we want to pack as many Rocket League matches into this day as possible. Of course, we want them all to be streamed because we're in an in-studio LAN. There's no way none of these should go unstreamed. And so my opinion, run some round-robin groups. You get 2 groups of 4. I've got the distribution here where it's like EU3, NA4, NA5, EU6, and then NA3, EU4, EU5, and NA6. You've got those 2 groups. Notice how the NA1 and NA2, EU1 and EU2 are not up here right now. But if you run these round-robin groups, you're going to have 2 streams, each broadcasting 6 matches. I think that's absolutely perfect. The only other way that I would suggest that you do this is if you were to do, instead of a round-robin, do something where it's like Salt Mine Atlantic Draft. For those who are not aware of what Salt Mine Atlantic Draft was, back in COVID when we couldn't have much international competition, it was, I think, after RLCS X, before the 21-22 season started, Johnny Boy put open an event where teams, or like captains from each region, would draft a team, and then you would play cross-regional matches. Essentially, you'd have a bunch of European teams and North American teams, and the way that the group stage format worked is that each European team faced each North American team. So you could do something where it's like, if you're a team from Europe, just face all 4 North American teams. This would make 2 streams of 8 matches, which is still very doable. But you also run the risk of, having what happened in Salt Mine Atlantic Draft happening here. So that's why I kind of have the round robin groups. You still get to build a little bit of in-region rivalry with like the 4 and the 5 seeds, and then the 3 and the 6 seeds also facing off against each other. But then you still get your cross-regional matches. Like if you're a North American team, you're facing 2 European teams and a North American team in your group. So the top 2 from each of those groups advance into the lower bracket. And let's get into the playoffs. Broadcast remains as normal. You guys are used to this. You have your upper and lower AFL matches on Saturday, and then you've got your top 6 championship Sunday on Sunday. So it's the same schedule. Your upper bracket, that's where your top 2 seeds from North America and Europe come in. So the upper AFLs would have EU1 and NA1. I guess it'd be EU1 versus NA2, and then NA1 versus EU2. And then in the lower part of the bracket, you've got your teams that went through the round robin. So you've got your team in A3 and your team in B4. There shouldn't be 3 and 4. There should be 1 and 2. I'm not redoing the whole video. I'm sorry. The winners of Group A, and then the second place of Group B, and then the winners of Group B in the second place of Group A. That's how I think you structure the lower bracket here. I've got this set up so that, if EU3 ends up dominating Group A, they'll face off against NA2 here. Basically, this exact format, you can go into the weeds with what all of these say, but it is our normal AFL bracket. I tried to make it so that the only non-cross-region matchup is literally just the semifinals, I think, because it's impossible to have these be cross-region matchups and these be cross-region matchups if all the favorites win. But I'm assuming by the time we get to the semifinals, there will at least be one upset because this is Rocket League, right? So that's my suggestion for the ideal kickoff LAN format. I think you distribute some points based on this as well. But you'll get a pretty good idea of how the regions stack up against each other. I think it plays nicely with how, Blast has wanted to broadcast this kind of stuff before. You got your dual streams on Friday, and then everyone's paying attention during the weekend. So this is really what I hope they cook up, genuinely, because this gets us a lot of matches against, region against region, gets us a nice studio LAN. Obviously, I hope they expand this tournament next year to include South America and the Middle East, because it's going to be an absolute robbery that we don't have Falcons with Drawley at the first international competition of the year. But it's a great start, and this is how I would draw it up for now. So hope you all enjoyed. Blast, if you're listening, hello. Feel free to use it. I mean, y'all know my opinion. So that being said, catch you guys all later. Shout out to the channel members. Scrolling right across the screen right around now. It's just more fun to do it that way. So, but yeah, thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time. Cheers.